Good morning and welcome to class. I think I have allowed everybody enough time to settle in and log into the system. And our topic today is the internal organization of a purchasing department. Generally, it's purchasing structures, but my focus is more on the internal organization of the purchasing department. I would like to focus your attention to three areas today. One is how the purchasing department is organized. So by the end of today, you should learn how the purchasing department looks like from the top most person to the lowest levels, and how it basically operates every day, and the roles of each person. The second thing should be the functional division of roles, division or organization of work. Let me just call it organization of work. That is to mean, can people operate at the same point? Can people work? Can people work from the same location, or is work divided? And number three, we will look at the general structures of an organization. I will not focus a lot on this because these ones are easy. Number three, they are very, very easy to do. But then my main focus will be on number one, how the purchasing department is organized for good order, basically. So this is the focus of our study today, and it is very important because you should have at the back of your mind, you should learn how a department operates of purchasing. When you're going to work, you should expect that a certain person performs certain roles in a certain way. So when you're given, for example, when you're applying for a position like purchasing officer, or supply chain management officer, principal supply chain management officer, or senior supply chain management officer, or assistant supply chain management officer, at least you should understand at what level are you coming in to operate. So I'll be very systematic that way, and I will also introduce a few of the names that we use legally, so that when you're dealing with some of the organizations that we report to, an example is Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, PPRA. If when you're dealing with PPRA, you should know who reports to PPRA, how are they supposed to do that, and just basically to teach you a little bit of politics of work, why certain people have certain problems when with the procurement department. Why is the procurement department viewed as very slow? And such things. It's not a topic per se, politics of procurement, but it will come up within our learning today. So I find this one of the most important topics of our unit. Anytime I'm taking through students through this, I usually find it very, very important for them to know, so that when they go to work, they will not find it new. You already know at the back of your mind the theory that should be applied there. I would like to know whether I'm audible to everybody. I don't want to begin a census, but let me just ask you, yes, to type whether you can hear me and see me, and also see my screen. I have shared my screen. You can just type whether I'm audible. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you. So let me just go ahead and begin. But before that, I wish to mention something here. Let me just check an issue regarding projects. Sorry? Was that referred to me? Let me just check something about projects here. I believe I'm supervising a number of students from this class in projects. The response has not been very good from everybody. And so, just a minute, let me check those names. So I'm supervising the following. I know Hannah is not in this class. There's Elizabeth Mudama. I don't know whether she's from this class. But among the people who have attended today, let me see if there's one. There's Ian Dongo, there's Morgan, Joram, William, Joseph, and Jamila is, I'm not sure whether she's in this class. Okunda, Honora, Jen Joki, Anne Rugay, Anthony Mushoki, Kevin Dongo, Faith Vitali, Moses. Okay, none of them from your class. Okay, that is fine. But if there is one from your class, maybe you can ask them to contact me. We need to be, by now I usually like students, when I'm teaching this topic, we are around finishing up with the proposal. We only have 2 topics to go. So I find some students are a bit slow on that. If you have not started, I would encourage you to contact your supervisors and begin as soon as possible. So the internal organization of a purchasing department is basically to teach you how an organization operates. The topmost person in purchasing, the one who has the highest rank in purchasing, is known as an accounting officer. I wish to clearly state this, that the accounting officer is the head of the organization. Is the head of the organization. I think I have written that somewhere. An accounting officer is the head of the organization. This means it is not the accountant. There's a difference. An accountant is in the accounting department. This is not the finance officer. The finance officer is, or the finance manager, those are members of the finance department. But the accounting officer is the person you usually call, a CEO or a director general or a director, or in a university, it's the vice chancellor. And this is the person who is the head of the top, not the head of procurement, the top, the most responsible person in procurement department. Before the new act, I'm sure you know that our act is from 2015, the Public Procurement Asset Disposal Act 2015. Before that, we were using the 2010, and before that the 2005. In the 2010 and the 2005 acts, the head of procurement, the topmost person, was that it was an organ. It was the tendering committee or the tender committee. That was the top organ. However, these people in the tender committee are all employed. They are all employed by the accounting officer. They are employed by the accounting officer, their CEO. They are employed by their director. And so, more often than not, you would find that their work would be, interfered with by the CEO, because all he has to do is give a few threats here and there, and then they will do exactly what he says. So if they are in the process of selecting a supplier, all the accounting officer needed to do was direct them to do 1 or 2 things. That is in the 2010 and 2005 Act. So that gap was seen there, because even though they are told what to do by the accounting officer, they were the topmost organ. And so the responsibility will go back to them. The person who will answer the questions for anything good or bad that happened will be the tender committee. So that is what used to happen then. However, you will notice that they will be asked questions for actions they did, but they were influenced by another person. And so it was seen they are not an independent body, and the topmost person always needs to be independent, thinking on their own, and responsible for all actions. Hence, when the 2015 Public Procurement Act was created, the tender committee was removed completely. So we no longer have a tender committee. It does not exist. The committee that usually selects suppliers is called an evaluation committee. So that one does not have a lot of powers as the tender committee before, but then all those powers from the tender committee, they were awarded to the accounting officer, and roles were distributed among the other people. So the topmost person, the person most responsible, is the accounting officer, and this, I repeat, is the head of the organization. So the roles of the accounting officer are many, and since he or she is the person responsible for anything that happens in procurement, anything that happens in supply chain department, you will notice that the functions of this person look like the functions you think at the back of your mind would be done by a procurement officer. Let me repeat that. The roles in the Procurement Act, the roles of the accounting officer will look like they are the roles performed by the head of procurement or the procurement officer. They will look like they are the ones. However, in the Act, just as I have enumerated here in our notes, they are allocated to the accounting officer. The reason is because this is the person who puts the signature. So it works like this. Assuming let me come to a family setup. A family setup where you have a father, a mother, and children. The accounting officer, the head of that organization, the head of that institution, is the father. Generally, is the father. Now, that is how it's supposed to work. So that the father is responsible. They are not the one who do all the work, but they are responsible for anything that happens there. If the mother is sick, if the children are sick, the person who is responsible to ensure that everybody gets well, even if he or he himself is sick, the person who is responsible for his own good health is himself. So the father is the one who is supposed to be responsible for that institution. So they are not the one who do the work. They may not be the one who clean. They're not the one maybe who take the children to hospital, to school, or they're not the ones who who even breadwin nowadays. We are in like I have a class here of students who are ladies, and so you will go to work and you will get your own money, and if you get your own children, then you will school your own children. And so we are in a state where the women in our society will and can educate their children, but the person who is responsible, and what do I mean responsible? The person who answers the questions on behalf of that institution or family is the father. The same case, so that means that the father is the accounting officer. So the same case here, that the accounting officer in an organization answers all the questions for whatever happens in the procurement department, whether they are the ones who do it or not. So what basically this means is that nothing should happen that the accounting officer does not know. So if as a supplier is being selected, let me first begin with the institution again of family. If a child is being taken to school, if a child was disciplined at school, they may not be the ones who went in to deal with that issue, but they should know and follow up to ensure that they are responsible, that activity, that issue will go along well. Let me now go back to the organization. The accounting officer should ensure they follow up each and every role of purchasing to ensure that everything happens in order. And so in the act, and as I mentioned, I have drawn a majority of my notes from the Public Procurement Act because it is the document that guides our practice. And it is the document that you will use. I can assure you that it is the document that you will use when you go to work. You will refer to it a lot, many more times than you will refer to any other document. Actually, in procurement, we only have two major documents, the Public Procurement Act and the Procurement Regulations. And I wish to inform you that we have not been having procurement regulations since 2015, because when we changed our Public Procurement Act, we needed also to change the regulations. But now, this last month, but one, that is in May. The PPRA produced the regulation. So we now have a Public Procurement Regulations 2020. So you can check them out. They are in the Public Procurement Regulatory Act website. You can check them out. They are very, very easy to read, actually. They are very, very easy. They just discuss procedures, how procedures should be done. If you're going to use open tendering, they have laid out all the procedures and given you the ability to make very good decisions. So very, very interesting read as compared to the Act. The Act is a little bit cumbersome with a little bit of difficult English as compared to the regulations. And so I'm saying that I have drawn my notes from those two documents, the regulations and the act, and you will see that the functions here of the accounting officer, they are basically performed by the procurement officer. But then when the procurement officer is through performing them, he or she takes that document to be signed by the accounting officer, so that the accounting officer knows exactly what is happening in the Department of Procurement and authorizes it. So all the authority then is given back to the accounting officer. All that authority is given back. So the first function, and I will move a little bit quickly here then, because I've already explained all those politics around, all those things that of working and how they relate. The first function is to ensure that the procurement department has an approved budget and operates within that approved budget. I will simply say this in this point, that this class, this is the highest rule of procurement, that you should have a budget and that budget is approved, and you always work within that budget. If someone ever asks you which is the highest rule of purchasing, this is it. You should have a budget. Every organization, let me speak about public institutions, you usually have a budget that is started to be created around January in institutions. That's when they open the year, the calendar year. When they open the calendar year in January, they start the process of writing their own procurement plans and in the organization, such that they ask every department, what do you think you will need to buy for the year 2020, 2021? And so they are doing this in January 2020. So everybody tells them, and then they create a budget. It's passed up until it gets to the treasury, and when the minister for treasury is reading the budget in parliament, they will know that part of that budget is their own organization budget. And then now, since the budget was read in June, the ministry, the treasury is now busy trying to share the money between all the ministries, so that by around August, almost all the organizations will have what they requested, or more or less, depending on how it was seen by the treasury. And so you find that everybody has an approved budget to work with, and nobody should go outside that budget. This means that if you did not plan to buy something, you will not buy it. So you should forecast very, very well when you're doing your plan. So that is point number one, ensuring that there is a budget and it is approved. And I wish to mention something that I have already said. This budget is the plan, the procurement plan, the entire procurement plan, and part of that plan is the budget. The entire procurement plan is written by the procurement officer, but then taken to the accounting officer for signing off. And therefore it becomes their roles. As you can see here, is to ensure that procurement goods, works, and services of the public entity are within approved budget. Ensuring means that they are not the one who do it, they just ensure it is done. And so the role comes back to them. If anything will ever go wrong with the budget, the person who will tell us why it went wrong is the accounting officer. And I wish to give an example with the recent case of Kirinyaga County, where the governor for Kirinyaga County was questioned on certain decisions that the evaluation committee made. So you see, it's not her who made it directly, but she's the accounting officer. She's the governor, the head of that county. So she needs to answer a few questions on why did this go wrong? Why did that go wrong? And so because she's the one who should ensure that there's a budget and everybody operates within that budget. If you buy anything outside the budget, you'll tell us where the money came from. So it's as easy as that. And then, so basically, if we follow our procurement rules, we start to avoid corruption. As easy as that. So number two is to constitute all procurement and asset disposal committees. This is their role, that to ensure that there are committees. I have mentioned an evaluation committee. Here they mention an asset disposal committee, and you can see they are saying all of them. So again, this is their responsibility, but it will be done by the procurement officer. Procurement officer goes and suggests people in the evaluation committee, give us this person, or they suggest people in the disposal committee that I want 5 people. They write their names and then they take those names to the accounting officer. The accounting officer will have to sign them off, sign them off and say, okay, you can take them. But if, for example, they have put a certain person and that person has just been given a certain role by the accounting officer, he will say or she will say, no, you can't have this person. They are doing a certain job for me. So select a different person. So you can see they are the oversight. They make sure that everything happens well in that department. And now from point number 3, because I think by now you have understood that these roles are done by the procurement officer, but then it is the accounting officer who will sign that document to authorize it. The signature is for authorization. They'll sign it to authorize it. So I'll move a little bit quickly. So the other role of the accounting officer is that they ensure their procurement plans. I have mentioned that one of the things you get from a procurement plan is a budget. So they ensure their procurement plans. Again, it's done by the procurement officer. Number 4 is they ensure proper documentation. So you see, the records of the procurement department are kept by the procurement department. But if they are not there, the accounting officer will have to tell everybody why they are not there. They ensure compliance of the Public Finance and Management Act. This is an important act in the utilization of money. We in our course outline, we do not have an opportunity to read it. Let me just answer Siombua here. Samuel Siombua says he cannot hear me. I will tell him why. It's because I see how he has logged in from my end. Siombua have logged in using without either without either audio or microphone. You need to log in again and use one of the two. Refresh your page. Hear me, all you need to do is refresh your page, as long as maybe I'm not having an entire problem of the whole class not hearing me. All right. So I was saying that the Public Finance Management Act, I'll mention what is there. If you check our Public Procurement Act, there is no definition of an accounting officer. It is defined in the Public Finance Management Act. It's a very large document. It defines a lot of, it has a lot of definitions on who is an accounting officer, how we should utilize money. For example, it says that we should never buy above the market price. We should never buy above the market price. If you're buying a phone for your CEO and the phone is worth 70,000 in the market, you should not buy it above anything above 70,000. Anything above 70,000 should be 70,000 or below. So that's one of the items there. So for us to understand that, maybe you will need go through a certain aspects of the Public Finance Management Act. It's not a long document. You can actually go through the outline, the table of contents, and choose which parts are of interest to you. But let us first continue. The accounting officer approves and signs all contracts. This means that before any money leaves the organization, he or she should know and do something about it, through the authorization. So if they have not authorized payment, nobody will be paid. It's a good and bad thing. Let me mention that. It's a good and bad thing. It's a good thing because they are responsible. It's a good thing because they are responsible for what happens in the organization. But it's a bad thing because if they don't want a certain person to be paid, they can frustrate your work very, very quickly. All right. So another role is that they ensure the procurement and asset disposal process complies with the Procurement Act. Basically, they ensure that the process itself is compliant with our act. Then they ensure that the procurement process are handled by different professional offices. Now let me first handle the word professional. Kenya Institute of Supplies Management, ISIM, where you are supposed to be members by now. I hope you are members by now, because I think you saw the Gazette notice that in 30 days, that is between July 1st and July 30, everybody who is practicing procurement, including students, because we have student officers, yourselves, all of you are student officers, you should ensure that you are members of Kenya Institute of Supplies Management. You apply by, you have to go with your KISIM, you have to go with your student ID. That's one. And then you have to fill a certain form and pay 3,000 shillings to be a member. It's important for you to have it when you're looking for work. It's not mandatory, but it is important. There's a difference. So that's a professional. So KISIM states that a professional must be registered with them. So the accounting officer should ensure that whoever is working in their department is a professional, meaning they have been trained. You go to Boniface, they are at Nation Center in town. All right. So let me just answer that here. Nation Center in town. That's where their offices are. All right. The other, so the accounting officer has to ensure that everybody in the procurement department is a professional, whether they are registered with KISIM or not. They have the correct papers, and the roles are divided. Not one person does everything. When one person does all the work, what happens is that there is a high chance of corruption. I will state that later when I'm discussing the evaluation committee. Let me just finish this up. So number 9 is to submit. The accounting officer must ensure that they submit to the authority. Now, the authority here is something you learned in procurement law. The authority refers to the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, PPRA. Their offices are usually in National Bank headquarters, and I don't know what they call it nowadays because National Bank was swallowed by CBA. They merged. So, but I think the building is still called National Bank headquarters. So the PPRA sits there in that building, and so you must submit your procurement plans to PPRA to demonstrate what you plan to do in the financial year, and you must also report to the authority every quarter of the year. So we do this by writing a letter. You write a letter to PPRA after every 3 months. So every quarter of the year, every 3 months, you write them a letter saying these are the procurements we have done in the organization, and these are the ones that were open tenders, and these are the ones that were not open tenders, and you have to give a reason for those that were not open tenders, because when you are taught open tendering, or as you will be taught open tendering, maybe in principles of purchasing, you will be told that the recommended method of procurement is open tendering. That does not mean that we should not do any other, but it means this: when you do any other method other than open tendering, you should have a good reason for it, and you should put it in writing and report it to PPRA so that they can keep track of what you're doing in the organization. Nobody does not have a boss. So that's our direct boss. That's the police. I would call PPRA the police of procurement. They enforce the law. They ensure that the act is followed. They enforce the act. And finally, number 10, any other responsibility assigned by this act. That is the Act of Public Procurement. Before I move on, I would like to state that if you downloaded, if this was a face-to-face class, I would ensure that I would go around the class checking whether everybody has downloaded the Public Procurement Act. It's 40 KB, for heaven's sake, only 40 KB. That one, if you take a selfie right now, that it will be more than 40 KB. So I don't think that size can disturb your phone or your computer or whatever other gadget you're using. I don't think it can even, hawezi tingiza size yake hata kidogo. So I will suggest to you that you make sure that you have downloaded the Public Procurement Asset Disposal Act of 2015. You just Google it, it will be there. I would prefer you download the one from PPRA. So go to the PPRA website, just type PPRA, and then the website will appear. Download the one from them, because theirs is the 2015 Act, but it was revised in 2016. So it's the final version. It's a final version. So, but even if you download the other one, the differences are in the differences between the one that is revised and the one that is not is mainly in the editing. So there's nothing much about it. So I would advise you to download it, and you can find these roles of the public procurement of the accounting officer in section 40. You will in section 44. You will find them in section 44, and that will be easy for you to just read them. Now that you have learned what I have taught you, you can begin with section 44. Section 44 basically speaks about the internal organization. How do you know it's section 44? It's written 44. They are not written in section 1, section 2. The word section is not written. It's just written 1, 2, 3, 4. So just go to 44, and then you'll find them there. So it's important to note that these roles are not performed by the accounting officer, as I have been mentioning. They are not performed by the accounting officer directly. They are performed by the head of procurement and his or her people. Everybody in the procurement department does something. Like now, when the head of procurement writes the letter every quarter of the year to show what they have been doing, they take it to the accounting officer for them to sign. I don't think it's the head of procurement who will take it to the National Bank headquarters. I don't think so. I've never seen that happen anywhere. He or she will send one of his people. Maybe if you're passing through town, as you go home, go with it. Because more often than not, we like to take it hard copy, so that you can even start creating a relationship with the people in PPRA. I want to remind you that one of the roles of PPRA is to ensure that they help us whenever we are stuck. For example, you have a decision to make in the office as a procurement officer, and so you don't know which direction to go. Basically, you're not sure. Cindy, please mute your mic. You don't know which direction to take, which decision to make, and so you are at a dilemma, and so they can quickly help you. You can call one of them, the people in the PPRA office, and they will help you make that decision. All right. That is the accounting officer. Cindy, I would like you to mute your mic. We have a lot of feedback from your microphone. Okay, even one of you is her friend. You can call her, please. As long as it does not require you to log out, because for me it will require me to, it will interrupt my presentation. But let me just move on. Let me just try and mute her from this end. Okay, it will take me such a long time. I'll have to reset all the settings. Let me just move on. Okay, the head of procurement. So we have spoken about the accounting officer. Now it's the turn to look at the people inside the department and how they basically operate. I don't like that feedback. Making me think every time someone wants to talk to me. Let me see what I can do about it.
Nikati ya hivi sasa. Nataka kuona kama uko itatosha chini ya kitanda mwake viatu. Niko nataka kwenda kukana vitu zangu. Unaenda kukana vitu zako sindi. Kwani huko umesema utaweka kwa masuper drum? Kwa super drum mteka aje vitu za glass mama? Una box ya kuweka?
Okay, finally I've managed to mute her. Oh, we can proceed. I have managed to mute her finally. Okay. So the head of procurement is the head of the department of procurement. Now, when in the office, this is the person. When maybe if the procurement department all sit in one section of the office, this is the person who is basically the head in that section. And so, interestingly, very interestingly, the role of the head of procurement is only one. And I wish to read this as directly as possible from the Procurement Act. It may take me a bit of time to actually display it here, but let me just read it as it is. All right, it is here, and it's stated as follows, that the main role is to render procurement professional advice to the accounting officer. Let me go back to my notes now and highlight that part, because I have tried to make it as direct as possible, that their main role is to render procurement professional advice to the accounting officer. Now, I would like to concentrate my attention to this procurement professional advice. When you perform these roles, and I'm saying you because you're the procurement officers, when you perform these roles that we have discussed here, the ones I have highlighted in green, when you perform them, eventually you will need to write a professional advice. We basically call it a professional opinion. That is what we call it. We call that a professional opinion in practice, in the industry out there. What is contained in the procurement professional opinion is the following. Just give me a minute, just a minute. All right. I was saying that the contents of the procurement opinion are the following. One, a review of the procurement and asset disposal proceedings. Any proceedings that you have done, make sure that you review them. Tell the accounting officer what you have done, basically. Then an evaluation criteria. How did you evaluate your suppliers? The legality of the tender. Why have you awarded the tender that you have? Why did you give it? Is it legal? Then you tell them what is the recommended price for standard goods that you're buying. What is the price in the market? What is the recommended price? What have suppliers provided to you? If the supplier you have selected, say you have selected a price of 1 million shillings, what is the price in the market? So you need to put that. Do you have money in your procurement plan? In the budget you did, do you have money to buy what you're saying you need to buy? And then what is your view about that whole selection that you have done? What is your view? Now, let me state it this way, that this procurement professional opinion is more often than not done after you have had a sitting with the evaluation committee. So you are in the evaluation committee, you're supposed to be in that committee as the secretary, but then afterwards, you're supposed as the evaluation committee is writing its own report, sit down and write your own professional opinion. The most important part of a professional opinion is this last one: a recommendation for change of scope. Maybe the evaluation committee, after your meetings, because you're not the chairperson, you're just the secretary, you have decided that in that evaluation committee, you will select supplier, maybe called Omondi and Omondi Associates. But you feel in your practice that Omondi and Omondi Associates is not a very trustworthy person. And so you need to select Maraga and Sons. So this is where you lay it down, a recommendation for change of scope. This is where you basically lay it down. You say that in our practice with this and this supplier that has been selected, we have found them to have delays or have poor quality, even though they are the current winners. I recommend that we do not select them and select the second lowest. So I know you have been taught so far that the lowest price is the best price, but I wish to state it to you here that if that lowest price will compromise on certain aspects which you feel are important as a procurement officer, notice the words I'm using. They don't even sound like legal terms. You feel, you have done work with this person. And why am I using the word feeling, which is not a very good term in law? It's because of the issue of trust. When you don't trust a person, trust is built. It's a qualitative, not a quantitative aspect. You cannot calculate it. However, you can tell that a certain person is most trustworthy than another. So when a supplier is untrustworthy, yet that supplier is the lowest, you can recommend in your professional opinion that you do not select that lowest person, you select the second lowest. However, there are few technicalities with that. Let me give you one technicality, which is the most important and may cause you to appear in front of a parliamentary commission, commission of inquiry. If the lowest person is 1 million, second lowest is 2 million, you cannot select the second lowest, where the second lowest person is almost near double or double the lowest. That is, the lowest is 1 million, the second lowest is 2 million. It will look as if you're doing corruption. So corruption is more of an appearance issue. It's more of an appearance issue in most cases than not. So you must avoid the appearance of impropriety. And in our last topic, we'll be speaking about basically corruption, how to avoid corruption. We cannot allow you to go into the market without discussing that. We have to discuss corruption and its cases. So it's more of an appearance issue where, because it will appear the second lowest person is double. And so in that case, where you still cannot select the lowest person because of issues of trust, you are allowed to repeat the process all over again and invite new suppliers so that they can compete. Question comes in, suppose you don't have time to repeat the process. In that case, then you're allowed to do direct procurement. I'm playing around with these terms. I don't know whether you're understanding them. I have an issue because nobody logged in with using their videos. So I would be looking at your faces to see, do you understand direct procurement? Do you understand? Let me pick on a person who has their mic here. Unfortunately, if you signed in with your microphone, Brian Nyamoy. Let me speak to Brian Nyamoy. Brian Nyamoy, can you hear me? He has disappeared immediately. Felix Koshar. That's a good question, Marion. I'll come to that right now. Felix cannot. Yes. Felix, you have your microphone. You can just click on. I'm not asking you whether I can hear you. I'm asking you a question. Do you know what is direct procurement? Don't type. Switch on your mic. It'll take a long time because the next question I'm going to ask you is define direct procurement. Oh, okay. All right. Let me have Lucy then. Lucy Kimani. Lucy, can you hear me? If you can hear me, switch on your mic. As long as your background is good. Okay. Okay, Lucy, if you will not switch it on, I'll switch it on from my end. You see, that's the unfortunate thing.
Yes,
so, Lucy,
I can hear you.
Yes, do you know what is direct procurement? No, which topic are you in principles of purchasing? Let me stop harassing the whole class. Let me stop harassing the class. Which topic are you in principles of purchasing?
Topic. I think topic 4.
The title. I need the title. I need the title. Okay. Lucy, you don't have to check. Let me just mute you. Anyone who is sure of the title, please just type the title, please, so that I stop harassing you guys. Sourcing is the topic I'm looking for. Have you started discussing methods of sourcing? Sourcing is wide. Have you started discussing methods of sourcing? It's very, very wide. You may have started or not. Okay. Yes, Elizabeth, but which area? Which area of sourcing? Elizabeth, if you will not talk, I'll just mute you. Okay, the moment I've started asking questions, people have started disappearing. I'm not going to ask another one then. That's right. Yeah. A lot of people have disappeared suddenly. Which area of sourcing are you in? Okay. Have you started discussing open tendering? Have you discussed open tendering? I need to know so that I know how to approach. No. Okay, thank you. Let me answer Marion's questions before I forget. She's asking, so should we choose the lowest supplier to avoid corruption? No. The answer is no. Okay. There are two answers. Let me answer yes first. It is the right thing to do. When you are defining the right price, the definition of purchasing, you say it's the acquisition of goods, works, and services at the right price, at the right this, at the right that, to be delivered at the right place. So the definition, the right price is the lowest. So selecting the right price will mean that yes, you are avoiding corruption, because it means it is a competition that you have allowed suppliers to compete fairly, and eventually the lowest has been selected. So that's the right thing to do. However, I think when you are discussing the definition of purchasing, I think so, I'm not sure what you did. You could have mentioned that the lowest price is not always the best, because sometimes a person could have another issue that was not captured in the selection process. In the selection process, we capture three things. We capture, one, their mandatory documents, like have their company been registered? Do they have a tax compliance certificate? Issues like those. So documents, that is step one. Those who have qualified, they go to step two, where you check quality. We call them technical aspects. Just quality is basically quality. Technical aspects is quality. The ones who qualify will go to step 3. So basically, you cannot select the lowest price who has a poor quality, because those ones with poor quality were already eliminated. However, you can see we have not checked reputation, neither have we checked trust. We have not checked reputation, neither have we checked issues of trust. And so that basically means that where you find a person has no trust, and I wish to mention why I'm keeping on mentioning trust. Trust is the rule of the thumb. Trust is the basic rule of the thumb. What do we mean by the rule of the thumb? It's the most basic item in procurement that you can work with. A supplier who is untrustworthy does not qualify to be selected, whether their price is the lowest and they have qualified in everything else. I will give you an example. There is a company that I know last year. You know that companies usually give their employees medical covers. And so last year, they were looking for a new supplier for their medical insurance cover. And many companies applied: CIC, Jubilee, Madison, all the ones you know, Old Mutual, Britam, all the ones you know, and even the ones I don't know. There are many insurance companies, especially the new ones. There are very many. The smaller ones are actually more. I am informed they could be more than 500 in Kenya. I'm informed. However, I don't even know 10. So in that process, I will inform you that one company actually won. It was the lowest price. It's a tender. It's a large tender. Medical cover is always a large tender, because you're covering people with inpatients of large amount of money, say inpatients of 3 million. In the good companies, you have people with inpatients of 10 million and even 15 million. And so the premiums that are to be paid by the company are large. And so basically it becomes a huge tender. It becomes a tender, an open tender. And so the company that was lowest won, but it was not selected. It was not selected. It's an open secret. It was not selected because of issues of reputation. Trust and reputation, you have to check those two. So to answer your question, you select the lowest to avoid corruption, but only when trust and reputation go hand in hand with the lowest price. I hope that answer is well. Yes, trust is the basic. Trust is the basic. I don't think I would even consider suppliers who are untrustworthy. And what do we mean by untrustworthy? It's a supplier who fails you in the most basic thing of a contract, delivery. They basically do not deliver. So you go to a hospital, you have a certain insurance, and they tell you, here we don't take that insurance from that company. Then there is no need to take that company anyway. You will select a medical cover for your staff members, which they'll never use. So your customers are not happy. So trust is the key. So lowest price. Price is very important. I'm sure you have been told that price is, in fact, check all the corruption cases in Kenya. Trust was never an issue. Trust is our issue as procurement people. Trust is ours. Ni yetu. Kama mtu haumtrust hauwezi work na yeye. But ukipelekwa kotini, mtaongelelea mambo ya price. More often than not, it's about the price. Let me pick one corruption case in Kenya that is an issue about price. Let me pick the IEBC. The IEBC is always a good example, where the IEBC, they were buying biometric equipment for elections. And then they did an open tender, and then they discovered that no supplier is good enough. The way Chiloba presented it to Kenya when he was doing the press conference, you see, Chiloba is not the head of procurement. He was the accounting officer. So the accounting officer may not know the procurement jargons, but he presented it to say no supplier met the criteria. Basically, the word he used was, if I remember correctly, the word he used was they were non-responsive. Non-responsive is a procurement term, actually. None of them was responsive, meaning that nobody met the criteria. But what did they do next? They went and direct procured. I highly suspect, in my own analysis of that case, the issue was trusting those suppliers. You see, you're buying equipment for an election. Elections are very sensitive in Kenya, and you cannot work with a supplier who you do not trust. So it is an issue of the organization. But what did the country see? The country saw a person who is just trying to buy equipment from a certain place so that they can eat some money and also influence elections. So that is basically what happens. So when you're taken to court on issues of price. But as long as you did the following: you wrote a procurement opinion and explained yourself very well to the accounting officer, and you reported to BPRA. If you did that, even if you're taken to court, you report that you gave your explanations to PPRA and to your accounting officer on why you selected the supplier whom you selected. So that basically forms the importance of a procurement professional opinion. So any work that you do with your evaluation committee, then you go back and ensure that you report it in your opinion, and you report it to PPRA. I would like to end there. Marion is commenting. I want to go to evaluation committees. I'll pass on. I will pass over them very quickly. In fact, I'll basically state, as Marion is making her comment or question, I'll basically state the main role of each committee. The evaluation committee's main role is to evaluate suppliers. That is its main role. As you can see, they deal with the technical, financial, negotiation, and bids and proposals of suppliers. So their main role is to evaluate. It consists of between 3 and 5 members, and this issue again arose in the last hearing so the professional opinion must be approved by PRA. No. Let me answer that question, Marion. No. The professional opinion is taken to the accounting officer to advise the accounting officer. It's an advice. You are advising them what to do. It's not a must they take your advice, by the way. They can decide not to, but they need to tell you that they will not do that in writing. You have taken a document, a report, which is the opinion, to advise the accounting officer. And so it's not a must for the accounting officer to do what you want. When you take your opinion to the accounting officer, later on, that's when you now do another report and take it to PPRA. So those two are different. They are two different reports. I was mentioning about the evaluation committee. I was saying it consists of between 3 and 5 members, and I was saying that this arose if you followed up. And I would like you guys to start following up these cases of corruption, because I have not done statistics of this, but I will stand by my statement that 90 to 95% of corruption cases in Kenya are influenced by procurement. They are influenced by procurement, one way or another. Why was the governor of Kirinyaga, for example, under siege? It's because of what her evaluation committees have been doing. She may actually have absolutely no idea. I don't think she's trained in procurement. But one of the questions that her lawyers were answering was that in one of the evaluation committees, there were 3 people. I don't know whether the MCAs know this, because I also don't think they do, but the MCAs were complaining that in one of our evaluation committees, there were 3 people. I listened to that, and I just wanted to hear how our lawyers would argue back, because 3 people is correct. Why would someone say your evaluation committee has 3 people? Yes, 3 people is correct. So I'm not defending her. I don't even know the entire case. All I know is that it's procurement related, and it was intriguing for me to listen as someone say that the evaluation committee had 3 people. 3 people is not right, and so why does it have 3 people? I don't know how many members they were expecting. Maybe they were expecting 5, but the act says it consists of between 3 and 5 people. When you have 3 people, it means that the work is not too much. When you have 5 people, it means the work is too much. Why are they in odd numbers? It's because you, as the procurement officer, you're the secretary. You're the secretary. What does the secretary do? They take minutes. Secretary is not involved in the actual evaluation. So the other 2 or 4 people remaining, if you have 3, there are 2 people remaining. If there are 5, there are 4 people remaining. They will divide those documents into 2 groups. And then in the 2 people will, into 2 groups, such that if there are 4, they'll divide them into 2 groups. If there are 2, it will only be in 1 group, such that one document will have to go through the hands of 2 people. So that if I check a certain document myself, then Marion will have to reconfirm what I have seen. So that if I say a supplier does not have a tax compliance certificate, and so we need to eliminate him or her, then Marion will have to confirm that. Because it's very unfortunate if we eliminate a supplier because they do not have a certain document or they do not meet a certain criteria, yet they have actually met that criteria. That's how it is supposed to happen. However, in practice, it could be a little bit of a challenge for that to happen because of time. You may have 100 documents or 500 documents to go through. And so if you divide them such that I go through them and then another person goes through them, then you will take a lot of time. I don't think the evaluation committee would mind taking a lot of time because more often than not, evaluation committee members are paid. They are paid allowances for sitting in those committees because they are members of your organization. You pick your finance officer, ICT officer, you pick the security officer, you pick one of the people in the user departments, because as you can see here, it consists of between 3 and 5 members appointed on a rotational basis. That means that ukiweka mtu round hii usimweke next time, so that it is rotational, and it is rotational because they are being paid. It's a rotational basis comprising heads of user departments and 2 other departments or their representatives. So you choose people from your organization. Remember, when they are coming to help you in your work of evaluation in the evaluation committee, their work is not stopping. So you need to pay them and you need to move as quickly as possible. However, those are antics you play with around the organization. Tell them we are going to take 1 week, we are going to go to a certain hotel, just to motivate the guys to do a good job. And so you are the secretary of that committee. You do not do the evaluation yourself, so that in the end you write your own opinion. Because if you do evaluation, you are part of that evaluation committee's report. And then if they have selected supplier Y, and then you go and select supplier A, then it will look as if you're going against exactly what you did. So we advise you to only take the minutes and, maybe you can assist them to compile the data, not the actual evaluation. So that is the evaluation committee. These are the content of its reports. Basically, its report will contain what they did and who they selected eventually. So that now from there, 2 reports will come from an evaluation committee, yours and that of the evaluation committee. Yours, we will call it an opinion, and theirs will be the evaluation committee report. The other committee we have is an inspection and acceptance committee. Its work is to inspect goods, works, and services once delivered. So you're the secretary, you do not do the work, you take the minutes, but you guide them. You tell them, do this, do that. Even in the evaluation committee, you tell them that we can't do that. Our act cannot allow us to do that. You guide them. So we call you the facilitator. That is what we call you in practice. People are called the facilitators. The procurement officers are the facilitators. So their work is to accept or reject in the inspection committees. Finally, is the asset disposal committee. Its work is to dispose of assets of the organization that are redundant or obsolete. Maybe you have used certain printers in your office and you need to buy new ones, and so you need to dispose of the old ones. You need to look for a good place where to either sell them. You can give them off to the needy. And by the needy, we don't mean the poor, we mean anyone in need. And you can give them off to people in. Let me just mute Elizabeth. And so you can give them off to anybody in in the society who is needy. However, the asset disposal committee will have to decide on which assets are you disposing, what is the method that you're going to use, how are you going to evaluate the winner, are you going to advertise, and then you go ahead and do that process. So that is how the department looks like. Now, let me go back a bit. We have an accounting officer who is the head of the organization and also the head of other departments. You can imagine the CEO is the head of procurement as well as HR, as well as ICT, as well as customer service. All departments, they are heads of all the departments of the organization. But just the way we are saying the accounting officer has roles in procurement, they also have roles of HR, they also have roles of other departments, but our focus is on procurement now. And then we have a head of procurement who is the head of the procurement department. Under this person, there are many people. These are the people who help him or her to do the work. All these work that we have given to the accounting officer, they help him or her do the work. And then the head of procurement will now take documents for signing to the accounting officer. So they will, after, so in the department, you can have the head of procurement. In most organizations, it's called, of the government of Kenya today, they are called the supply chain managers. Supply chain managers. In some places, there will be officers. If you don't have a manager, they will have principal supply chain management officer. And then they will also have senior supply chain management officer in that order. And then supply chain management officer 1, supply chain management officer 2, or procurement officer 1, officer 2, that way officer 3, and other people. So all those people, they will be under the head of procurement, and then we will have committees. So that's how the department basically looks like. I wish to move quickly over the other two areas. This will not take me even 10 minutes because I'm sure you have you know what are centralized and decentralized purchasing functions. When you're working in purchasing, you can have a company that has more than one branch. So you have a Nairobi branch. In Nairobi, you have Upper Hill branch, and then CBD branch, and then you have Eldoret branch, Kisumu branch, Kitale branch, and other branches. Kilifi, you have Mombasa, and if you have all those, the question is, let me pick a company like Kenya Wildlife Service. Kenya Wildlife Service headquarters is in Langata, but they have offices everywhere. They have them in Savo, they have them in Amboseli, they have them everywhere. In every national park, they have offices. Question is, will the people in Savo wait for materials to be purchased for them from the headquarters? So, in Kenya Wildlife Service, I have a little bit of information about them. The food for the animals in the national parks, the food for those animals is purchased in a decentralized manner. They buy it from wherever they are. So the people for Savo, they buy their own. The people for Amboseli, they buy their own. The people for any other national park, they buy their own. But the food for the staff is centralized, such that they buy it from Nairobi and then distribute it by air to every other location. So that's the difference between centralization and decentralization. Centralized purchasing is where you buy at the headquarters, you buy Sorry about that. My internet just went down. Sorry about that. So I was saying that centralized is where you have materials being purchased from one location, and decentralized is where everybody buys from their own locations. And so mainly in these notes, I have discussed the advantages of centralized and the disadvantages of decentralized. I believe that is easy, and I don't want to focus a lot on that so that I don't have a lot of center-led is the mixture of both, where like in KWS now they have both. In the uniform of the Kenya Wildlife Service rangers is purchased from Nairobi and then distributed, airlifted everywhere. So around the country. So that's center-led. It's just a mixture of both. And finally, the last area I needed us to remember and remind ourselves, is hierarchical structures. Hierarchical organizational structure, this one. And so I remember in I think this was primary school, and so this is why I don't usually like focusing on this. This is an institution of higher learning. When I start teaching you things you learned in high school, it will be wrong. It will be absolutely wrong. A waste of your intelligence. So in high school you are taught horizontal structures, vertical structures. You are also taught diagonal structures. In this level, at this level, we just pick them up a little bit and just call them, for example, in this case, if the marketing manager is speaking to the finance manager, that's horizontal. If or cross function, because they are in two departments, but still horizontal because they are all at the same level. If this marketing supervisor is speaking to the marketing manager, that is vertical. Where the marketing supervisor is speaking to the finance manager, that's diagonal, across departments and at different levels. As simple as that. Now, in this case, we call them matrix organization. Where you mix horizontal, vertical, and diagonal, which is basically what happens in most organizations. You have a matrix organization, and then you have functional organization where they are organized based on their departments. So you have a vice president, head of manager of human resources, and the manager of human resources. There are many departments. You have a product organization where the organizational structure, where the structure is guided basically by the products that they are producing. So the departments will be called salad, dressing, lunch meats, where they have lunch meat, macaroni and cheese, ketchup, barbecue sauce. So the departments will be named based on the products. And then you have a customer organizational structure where the departments are named depending on who the customers they serve. In a hospital, you'd find medical staff vice president, outpatient vice president, employees vice president. And geographical organizational structure, you will find they are named based on their areas, their locations: Eastern region, Western region, Central region, South, North, all which form one organization. So that is the end of my presentation today. I hope it has been informative, and I would like to open this session for questions. You can ask any questions, and before that, I would like to remind you that it is very important for you to attempt the discussion forum questions. Let me share with you those questions for today. Do not ignore them. I don't like giving assignments when I'm already giving discussion forum questions. That's what I was telling you yesterday. I was trying to inform you that yesterday, that if I give you assignments, yet we already have discussion forum questions, it will mean I'm repeating, and I don't like repetition. I know you also don't. So I see Boniface has already started answering these questions. 5 roles of the accounting officer, and why is the accounting officer involved? These are the politics. This is the politics of the organization that I'm trying to cover. Why is the accounting officer involved in the procurement department? It's the first thing I explained today. So answer these 2 questions. Do not ignore them, because they will account for your assignment marks. I'll do an average of all that you did. So let me now open up for any questions or comments, and then I can call it a day. You can switch on your mics and ask questions. You can type your questions. For those who came late, I informed the class that by now you should at least be trying to contact your supervisors for the projects, and also log into those units that we call research projects. Check who your supervisor is, then go and type research project. If it's Daniel Mwangi, I see most of you are under Daniel Mwangi, then type research project Daniel Mwangi. Then enroll yourself into that unit under Daniel Mwangi for research projects. Any questions? Brian Nyamwe. Can I speak to Brian Nyamwe? Brian Nyamwe, I've switched on your mic.
Yes,
Brian Nyamwe, how are you?
I'm fine.
You're an interesting student in this class because you have registered yourself under TRC and town. Are you in TRC or town?
TRC.
So I need to log you out of town, eh?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? I see your class rep is typing, so let me give you a bit of time. Okay, Dido, you just disappeared. Okay. Dido, I don't understand your question. Is there any principle that is procurement and asset disposal? I don't understand your question. Is there any principle guiding procurement and asset disposal? We have 7 principles guiding procurement, public procurement. Is that what you're asking? We have 7. Yes. I hope this is not a cut question from principles of purchasing mnaniletea hapa. Let me just answer you. I will contact Madam Jane. Msianze kumpiga chenga hapa. I know you this class is usually a tricky class. I always like to handle it as a tricky class because you're too clever for your own sake. We have 7. Let me just highlight them. Let me just highlight all of them. Do I tell you where they are? Okay, you can find them in the public procurement regulations. They are as follows. The first one, okay, the most important one, is competition. We have fairness, integrity, transparency, accountability, a 5, economical, 6, let me see which one I've not yet written. We have competition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th one, I'm forgetting the 7th one. So fairness, equality, integrity. All right, I've got it. We have due diligence. Those are the 7 principles of procurement. Why are you asking, Daido? May I ask why you're asking? Daido, I'm speaking to Daido now. Why do you need them? Is there one that you feel should be explained a bit better? It's not part of our coursework, but I can do that. Maybe you understand fairness. Fairness means equality. Integrity means upholding the status of the Office of Procurement. Transparency, we know. Accountability, I'm sure we know. I can explain the other three. Competition, we must ensure that we allow suppliers to compete fairly. Economical is that we should save. Procurement should always try and save cost. And due diligence, we should do a background check on our suppliers and on everything we have to ensure that we buy materials at the correct prices and we work with suppliers with a good reputation. But if there is one you would like me to go deeper in, I can do that. Daido, I'm still wondering whether there's one you wanted me to explain further. Okay, I will do that. I will do that. Let me wait for Daido's comment first. Daido, I think I've waited for too long. Let me first answer this one. How explaining due diligence in details. Okay. Okay. Due diligence is a concept that was introduced by the United Nations in terms of, because when we speak about ethics, we try as much as possible to borrow from the highest bodies. And as you know, our Kenyan laws are drawn from other laws of the land. And so due diligence refers, if I was to define it, it refers to carrying out duties carefully and thoroughly and avoiding careless practices. Let me type that here. It refers to performing duties refers to performing duties carefully and thoroughly to avoid careless practices. Avoid careless practices or techniques that we may have in procurement. That is what it means. I will give an example that basically it requires you as a procurement officer to go beyond your minimum effort, where a supplier tells you that they have certain professional certificates. Ask for them. And then when you receive them, maybe take the other step of checking whether they are authentic and not fake. Or let me give an example of where due diligence was a major question in one of our corruption cases that happened in Kenya today. Kenya of the recent past. Those of you from Bungoma County, you know that one day your procurement officers, or one day in the past, not so in the recent past, okay, not too recent, however, your governor was asked questions because they bought wheelbarrows at 104,000. You remember that case? Your governor, the one who is the speaker your former governor, the one who is our speaker of the Senate. I need to mention that just to so that I'm clear who I'm speaking about. So he was asked not because he's the one who did it, but he's the accounting officer. He needs to be responsible for whatever happens in his institution. And so they bought wheelbarrows at 104,000, and then they explained to the country that they were carcinogenic. I don't want to go into the definitions of carcinogenic, but I believe when that case came up, you did your own due diligence. It's not only that county. Let me not focus on people from Bungoma County too much. Kirinyaga County opened a Facebook page at 2 million shillings. That was the story that went round. There was such an issue. Nyandarua County bought a Christmas tree and decorated it, I think, at a cost of around 2 million shillings. Those are issues of lack of due diligence. Let me explain how. If you're purchasing wheelbarrows and one of the suppliers has decided to quote at a price that you have never seen before, you're required to do a background check. Go into the market, check the market price, and then so that the supplier does not give you uncompetitive and unfair prices. If someone tells you that opening a Facebook page for a county will cost this much, go do your background check and check whether that's the cost of opening a Facebook page. If someone is selling you Christmas trees at a certain price and charging you a certain price to decorate them, at your headquarters, just check whether that's the price. It's basically doing your duties carefully and thoroughly to avoid careless practices. As simple as that. Any other question? That's why I'm keeping on saying that I can backtrack almost all the cases of procurement, almost all of them. And, that 5% I'm leaving, saying 95% of corruption cases in Kenya are due to procurement. It's just because I don't want to bash our profession entirely. It's for mercy's sake. I don't think there's any other question. Nobody's typing. Nobody has switched on their mic. I wish to close it there. Take the remaining 1 hour, 20 minutes to answer the discussion forum questions. And then also, please go ahead and check the previous last week's discussion forum. I have opened it. I always do that. I will always try and be doing that. I open the discussion forum for last week so that you are not allowed, by the way, to answer any question from last week. The questions are supposed to be answered in the class. If you answer for last week, I'll know because I can tell what time you have answered that question, and I will basically just assume it, as long as you have not called me, maybe, or just to explain it. I was not in this class because of this and this, allow me to answer, then that is fine. You see, we need to communicate, guys. We need to communicate. You have very poor communication. You just fail to attend classes for no reason. So majority of you, not all of you, but majority. So kindly go ahead, answer those questions. Thank you very much for attending the class. I apologize, it took longer than I expected, than I had promised, but I believe it has been for the better good. I want to believe so. Thank you and enjoy your